So as I was saying, staphylococcal is found commonly on your skin, and it's a safe level, or safe to be on your skin. We need that to keep our skin healthy. But if you had an infected cut and it ended up in the food, that could become a problem. Botulism is actually one of those bacteria that's very interesting and is the most deadly type of bacteria that can end up in food. It is commonly found in dented cans. And the interesting thing with botulism is they are finding new ways to use that bacteria in types of pain remedies. So they're using botulism to help prevent migraines, because if they inject it into your brain, they can numb certain parts of your brain or cause paralysis so that you no longer feel that pain that is there that causes migraines. They are also using botulism in Botox. The way that Botox is going to work is they're injecting that botulism into your skin or into your face, and it causes paralysis of certain parts of your face. And so you can't get wrinkles if you can't move that part of your face. So kind of interesting. E. coli is found in your intestines naturally. And so if fecal matter, like from manure or from people going to the bathroom without washing their hands, it could end up in food. Kind of gross. And then listeria, they were finding that on melons pretty commonly. Listeria is one of those bacteria that actually can continue to grow even in cold temperatures. So it's sometimes found on deli meats, or it can continue to grow in your refrigerator. So something to look out for. Next, we have parasites. Parasites are going to be microorganisms that need another organism as a host to live. An example would be trichinosis in undercooked pork. And trichinosis, this used to be something that was really common, but now because the pork raising companies, the places that pork is produced, they give so many antibiotics to pigs that it is really uncommon for trichinosis to occur anymore. But it used to be a major problem because pigs are kind of gross animals. They're scavengers. They will eat anything that they find, like dead or alive. And so if an animal had died from worms and the pig ate the animal that had died from worms, they could end up with worms. And then if you ate that pig without cooking it properly or preparing it properly, you could end up with worms. And so that's why it used to be a big problem, but now it's very uncommon. Viruses are going to be the smallest and simplest microorganisms, and an example would be hepatitis A from raw or slightly cooked shellfish from contaminated water. So if you got water from an unsafe source, like if you were trying to eat food out of the Missouri River, you would probably end up getting sick if you didn't cook the food properly, or if you ate it raw, you could easily get a virus from that. Toxins are going to be poisons, and they are always bad for you. Some examples would be poisonous mushrooms, rhubarb leaves, and wild fruits. Poisonous mushrooms are very common. You wouldn't want to pick a mushroom from your yard unless you were like 100% sure it was a safe type of mushroom. Most mushrooms are poisonous, and so you'd have to be very, very, very careful about that. Rhubarb leaves are always poisonous. And then wild fruits, they actually say a lot of fruits will mimic the safe fruits. So again, you'd want to make sure that you knew exactly what you were getting, what you were picking, so that you were getting a safe fruit, not like a poisonous one. A way to prevent microorganism growth is through remembering the acronym FATTOM. And these are things that microorganisms need to grow. So they need food, and typically they like carbohydrates and protein. That's why like meats can't be set out on the countertops. Certain types of carbs like breads and things sometimes go bad if they're sitting out. It also needs acidity. It needs like low to no acid. That's why vinegar is often used as a preservative, because vinegar is a high acidic product. And so if you use that with your like pickles, it makes them last for a lot longer. So like cucumbers, if you pull them from your garden, they would go bad like in a couple weeks. But because people will put vinegar with them and pickle them, then they can last for months or even years sometimes. Time, every 20 minutes, the population of bacteria is going to double. And so the longer it's out at an unsafe temperature, the more bacteria that will grow and the more issues you could end up with. Temperature, the temperature danger zone is 41 degrees to 135. Every couple of years they come out with different temperatures that they realize, oh, this type of bacteria can live in this temperature range. So we need to change the temperature danger zone. But currently the range is 41 to 135. And in this temperature danger zone, that's when bacteria is going to be the most likely to grow. And so we keep our refrigerators lower than 41 degrees, and we keep our like hot cases higher than 135 to keep the bacteria from growing. Oxygen, bacteria won't grow without it. And that's why a lot of times when you have like crackers or food products, they're stored in a vacuum sealed container, and it won't start to go bad until you open it. Once you open it, the oxygen starts getting to it and it can start getting bad. And then moisture, the more moisture that's in there, the more quickly it will go bad. So think about like if you have a soup versus you have bread, the soup on the counter will go bad a whole lot quicker than bread would on the countertop. Some symptoms of foodborne illnesses or FBIs would be abdominal cramps, diarrhea, fatigue, headache, fever, and vomiting. All of those sound a lot like the seasonal flu or coronavirus. But with the seasonal flu, a lot of times people think they have seasonal flu, but it's actually foodborne illness. And if you think about it, typically all the people that you're around will end up with the same symptoms. And that's because you'll eat the same foods. The only remedy for foodborne illness is going to be rest and plenty of fluids. There's not really anything else that you can do for it. You just want to stay hydrated so that you're able to fight off that bacteria or whatever it was that was making you sick. Cleanliness. With cleanliness, you want to make sure that you're practicing hand washing, and it should be done in a dedicated hand washing sink. At the front of our classroom, we have a designated hand washing sink. In your own home, typically your kitchen sink is fine for you to wash your hands, but in businesses, you have to use a specific sink that is used just for hand washing, just so that there's less risk of cross-contamination where you're spreading bacteria from the sink to food products. You want to scrub your hands with soap and warm running water for at least 20 seconds. They say about the time it takes you to sing the happy birthday song or is about how long 20 seconds is. Never wear gloves in place of hand washing. They should be used along with hand washing. And gloves are to be worn when you have a cut or sore. Most companies will have like finger cozies that you're able to roll on over your finger if you have a cut, or gloves if you have like cuts all over your hands. If you had one on like your arm or something, you'd be able to like put a bandage over it because you're not going to be technically handling something with your arm. It's mostly just what's going to be touching food that you want to make sure is covered. When should you wash your hands? After using the restroom, of course. Before handling raw food. So before touching anything that you could consume. When switching from one food task to another, so that you're not cross-contaminating. After handling chemicals, because we don't want to cause chemical contamination. After handling garbage, because it could have physical or biological contaminants on it. And then before or after you smoke, you shouldn't be smoking anyways. But if you were to smoke, touching your mouth, you could end up with some saliva on your hands or germs on your hands. So you'd want to wash your hands. And then after eating, drinking, or taking a break, you would want to wash your hands so that you're not spreading germs. Food safety. Food preparation. Food cannot be left out for more than 4 hours. And you want to take into consideration that there was time before you were like in possession of that food that it could have been left out. So like at the grocery store, if they didn't put the order away immediately, there could be some time that they that you need to factor in, typically like 30 minutes to an hour. So typically you want to think about like that food needs to be left out no more than 2 hours. You want to use shallow containers for food storage because that's able to get cold quicker. Do not refreeze thawed foods. So once it's thawed, it needs to be used. You can't refreeze it. Do not partially cook foods and finish later. You have to cook them fully in one setting so that they are fully cooked. If you tried to cook partially and then cook it the rest of the way later, it won't get hot enough, quick enough, or for long enough in order to kill the bacteria. So you have to cook it all in one setting and then you could reheat it later. And then don't eat raw eggs, meat, poultry, or fish. All of those could contain certain types of contaminants. FIFO is first in, first out. That's the way that you should use items in the kitchen. And that's how you would store your items in the kitchen. So for example, when I used to work in a deli, we would sometimes order in certain types of deli meats for sales. So if, say, I got some in on Thursdays and then we got some in on Saturdays, the food that we got in on Thursday would need to be used before the food that we got on Saturday so that we are making sure that everything is staying safe. Food storage. You want to store food immediately after it's received so that it's staying cooler for long enough and not getting into that temperature danger zone. You want to store food away from chemicals and garbage so that it's not picking up any chemicals or any bacteria on them. Follow the FIFO principle of first in, first out. Store raw meat, poultry, and fish below ready-to-eat items in the refrigerator. This is important because sometimes your raw meats, poultry, and fish can leak like fluids or leak blood. And if those fluids leaked from like your top shelf onto lower shelves, it could ruin all of your food below it. So you'd want to store your meat and your poultry at the bottom of your refrigerator so that if it does leak, it's not contaminating anything else. And then store food at least 6 inches off the floor. This is important because it can, if it was on the floor, if you spilled any water or liquids on the floor, it could get onto the food. It also could cause you to have a rodent or a bug problem. So you want to store it at least 6 inches off the floor so that you don't have any of those issues. Thawing meat safely. There are 4 ways to thaw meat. You want to thaw it in the refrigerator. This will be one of the slower ways to thaw it, but it keeps it in that temperature, that safe temperature zone. You could thaw it under cool running water, and you want to use cool water. Warm water can heat it up into a temperature danger zone, so it has to be cool. You could thaw it in the microwave only if you plan on cooking it immediately. Otherwise, just do a slower version of the refrigerator or cool running water. But if you're looking for something quick, microwave is a way to go. And then you could also thaw it as part of the cooking process. So like if you're taking ground meat that is frozen, you could put it into the pan and cook it or brown it as you are preparing it. Never unthaw at room temperature. I know that a lot of families do that, but it is not a safe way to do it because it's in the temperature danger zone for too long. The temperature danger zone, remember, is 41 to 135, and food should not remain in that temperature zone for more than 4 hours because it can become unsafe. Lastly, what we have are the proper cooking temperatures for meat. Poultry should be cooked to 165. Ground beef should be cooked to 160. Fresh steaks, pork, ham, and roast should be 145 because they only have bacteria on the outside. Seafood should be 145, and then pre-cooked ham is 140 because you're just reheating it. That's all for safety and sanitation.